From Moosehead to Owl's Head to West Quoddy Head Light.
We gotta take the power back.
It's the George Hill, Rick Tyler Show. Talking the same-sex marriage issue now in the Newsmakers Hour and on the PDQ Door telephone line.
We gotta take the power back.
Matt McTighe with Mainers United for Marriage. Matt, welcome back to the George Hill, Rick Tyler Show.
Thanks so much, guys. Great to be back on. Love that intro. It gets me fired up every time.
Hey.
Okay, good to talk to you. Well, we haven't had a lot of polling on this. There's been a little bit of polling on it, and I don't know if that matters, but everybody loves polls. The last time we were involved with polling was back, I think in July. And the Portland Press-Herald had it 57-35 with Maine people supporting legalizing same-sex marriage on November 6th, and it was strongest in southern and coastal Maine. Okay, have you got any internal polling?
Yeah, there was, I think the one you're talking about from July was a BUR poll that had 55% support. There was a Press Herald poll that showed 57% support a few weeks after that. There's been some internal polling that's shown, the same thing, basically support wavering between 56 to 58% for the last couple of months. And it's holding steady, and it's actually, you mentioned that it's maybe a little stronger along the coast or in the south, but, we're seeing support, majority support for marriage in the 2nd Congressional District. We're seeing it just increasing all over the state. And that's, the biggest thing. We don't put a whole lot of emphasis on polls because we've been doing this grassroots campaign for the last 2 years. We've had more than 160,000 conversations with 2012 voters, and we're seeing the same, movement reflected in their conversations where people are changing their minds on this issue every day.
A lot of conversations and now more money coming in through the Win More States Fund. It's a dollar-for-dollar match. What is it, about $2,000 for Mainers United for Marriage if you guys can match it for $2,000. Some say, Matt, let me ask you this. Some say this is just a way to take the edge off the idea that out-of-state money is coming in to change the opinions, the hearts and minds of Mainers.
And the fact of the matter is that, the opponents leading the campaign on the other side that are trying to campaign against marriage here, get almost all of their money from out of state. There's a group called the National Organization for Marriage that just dumps millions of dollars. They dumped more than $2 million into the state in 2009. They're the ones actually literally running the campaigns in all 4 of the states that have marriage on the ballot this November across the country, including Maine. And they're the ones that fund these campaigns. So there are a few groups that are trying to help us, combat that, match it dollar for dollar, as you mentioned. But still, the majority of our funding, 2/3 of our donors come from right here in Maine, and we're really proud of that.
I've looked at this and heard all the arguments. The president came out and said he had evolved on it. He talked about a state issue, but although I get a lot of flack from some of my friends who are on the other side, I look at the 1967 Supreme Court ruling in Loving, Virginia. That was Loving v. Virginia. You know that case real well.
Sure.
And the Supreme Court said that the right to marry is of fundamental importance for all individuals, one of vital personal rights essential to the orderly pursuit of happiness. That seemed to be pretty definite.
Yeah.
It wasn't a racial case. It wasn't a sex case, but that's what the Supreme Court said in 1967.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of other court rulings since then. But what's interesting about Maine is we're more interested this time around in really just going directly to the voters. We made a sort of a historic first decision in Maine, going back to 2009, where we came so close. Maine, as you guys know, was the first state to pass marriage through the state legislature and have it signed into law by a sitting governor. It was overturned a couple months later by just 30,000 votes. But since then, that was 2009. Since then, we've just continued doing the work, the direct outreach, those one-on-one conversations I mentioned. And this is the first time ever that we've actually been able to sort of dictate the timing of one of these marriage campaigns, to actually do it at our own pace, to be on the offensive, sort of going out directly to the voters instead of trying to win it through the courts or through a legislature and then defend it. We decided, we'll take as long as it takes. And we didn't know when we began this campaign whether we were going to try to bring it to the ballot in 2011 or 2012 or 2020. We just knew that we were going to start going out and having one-on-one conversations, and when we felt like we'd seen the movement and seen people change their minds, we would bring it back up. We wouldn't have brought it if we didn't really think we had a shot at winning this year.
Mac McTighe with the Mainers United for Marriage on the George Hill, Rick Tyler Show. I want to ask you about the issue of states' rights, 10th Amendment, and the likelihood, if Maine says yes to same-sex marriage, that Maine will line up with Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Mass, New York, I think Iowa is also there, in suing the federal government claiming discrimination, which would take it away from being a state's issue and trying to make it a national issue.
Yeah, I mean, we're not involved in any of that stuff. The court cases are a long way away. I think, there are some court cases that are pending right now that have to do with just, the Defense of Marriage Act and allowing in states that have legalized marriage, just making sure that the couples that are legally married there in places like those New England neighbors you mentioned, having, all the federal benefits of marriage as well. But nothing, there's no talk at all right now that I'm aware of, and I probably wouldn't be involved in those conversations even if they were, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a campaign guy. But anything that's going to try to challenge states' rights or force us on any other state. But again, it's for us. You mentioned those New England neighbors. Maine does have an opportunity to join them and offering the freedom to marry to all loving, committed couples in the state. We've seen it happen in places like New Hampshire and Vermont and all those other states around here. And the only thing that's changed in those states is that, loving, committed couples are a little bit happier, a little bit more secure, and a little bit more stable because of it.
Do you think most people have made their minds up by now?
I don't know. I mean, I would have thought that if you'd asked me that a couple of years ago on an issue like this. But, what we find every day is that the more people just come out, not just come out as gay or lesbian, but just come out and talk about personally what marriage means to them. And I'm talking about not just gay or lesbian people, but all people. Just have a conversation about, well, why did you guys get married? What made you want to marry your wives? When we go door to door, that's the crux of the conversations we have. We ask people about whether they know anybody in their lives, a family member or a neighbor who's gay or lesbian. We ask them about their own marriages, why they decided to marry their husband or why they decided to marry their wife. And what they come to realize is that there are these shared values, the reasons why a same-sex couple in Maine might want to get married the same way that, the same reasons that any couple would want to get married. They found somebody that they fell in love with. They want to commit to that person for the rest of their lives and be with one person and stand up in front of their friends and family and make that commitment. So we do see people who, you asked, we do see people that do change their mind when they come to realize that. They see, this isn't trying to force my church to do anything. This isn't going to, impact my marriage at all. It's just going to make all marriages a little bit stronger by reaffirming the commitment that is at the core of marriage.
Matt McTighe with Mainers United for Marriage on the PD Cuter telephone line. Matt, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon on the George Hill Rick Tyler Show.
Great to be on, guys. Thanks so much.
Our telephone number is toll-free at 1-800-966-1039. Online, too. Eric Bennett is with the Maine Equal Rights Center. Eric, welcome to the George Hill Rick Tyler Show.
Good morning, guys, and thank you so much for having me on this morning.
It's interesting. You hear the name of the Maine Equal Rights Center. You might think you might be on one side of the same-sex marriage issue until maybe you dig into the voter's guide that you've prepared and some of the information that you've shared. Eric, why don't you share some of your thoughts on the issue?
Sure. Thank you so much. What we did was we approached this from two ways. The first thing we did is I would like to ask everyone listening that's near their computer to please Google Maine Equal Rights Center. And that's going to take you to our website. And on the front page, you're going to see at the bottom of the first homepage the three-point plan. And the three-point plan was designed specifically for candidates that are running for a public office to be able to talk to their constituents about this law and what the public policies will do and how it will affect our government. Excuse me. And so it's three simple points. One is marriage is not a right. You need a license to get married. You don't need a license for your rights. Rights are not benefits. Like you just heard Matt say, Matt keeps using the term freedom to marry. Like you'd think it was freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of marriage. Well, freedom of marriage isn't in there. What that is that's just a slick political rhetorical term that they're using to try to kind of confuse people and make them think that this is a right. But it's not. What marriage does, marriage is not a right, but you do get benefits from it. So we explain to people in depth, and candidates that are running for office, how to talk to their constituents about this. And the third part is changing state law does not change federal law. So in Maine, everything is already fair and equal. Same-sex couples have been able to afford the same rights and benefits as everyone else since 2004. And legalizing gay marriage is not going to get them any more rights. And so we explain to people how that works in very simple terms. So if people go to, if they Google Maine Equal Rights Center, that will take them to our website. And this is written in such a way that it's at anybody that's taken an 8th grade civics class will be able to see this and understand this. You don't have to be a legal expert. You don't have to be a lawyer. This is written for everyday folks so they can understand what's going on. And like you said, Rick, on the very end of this, at the very top, you're going to see the voter guide. And the voter guide summarizes everything that people need to know. So when Mainers are looking to vote on this, if they want to understand what's true and what's false, they can go there. Case in point is like Matt McTighe, who is the gay rights campaign manager, just said. He said that they're not going to join the 6 other states that are suing the federal government. That's clearly not true, because Matt is taking his marching orders from a national organization, and this national organization is the same one that laid out the plan for these other states to push through gay marriage. So that was at best a very deceptive answer. And so when people go to the website, Maine Equal Rights Center, and they're going to see the voter guide, and they're going to see the 3-point plan. And in between that is going to be every one of these issues, because marriage is an umbrella, and it covers many different aspects of law, benefits, rights, and responsibilities. And so we touch on some of those key rights and responsibilities. And so people can go here to the Maine Equal Rights Center and read this over very quickly and get a very full understanding of what's true, what's false, and what will happen if we pass gay marriage. And we can look at that because it's already been done in 6 other states. And the same thing will just happen here.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at something, because we asked the same question to both people. All right. Hasn't the Supreme Court already decided that marriage under the Due Process and Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, that they in the Loving Virginia case in 1967, didn't they say that marriage is deemed a fundamental freedom protected by the Constitution?
Good morning, George. What they said was that marriage is people that get married specifically have the right to cross state lines. And again, this is the problem that we have, because if Maine passes gay marriage, we're going to join a gay rights class action lawsuit to sue the federal government and take it to court. Now, the courts rule a number of different things that are not good. People can look throughout history in countries around the world, including this one, where the courts have upheld laws that were clearly not fair, were clearly not ethical, and were clearly not in the best interest of the people. So we don't want to take this before a court and have an activist judge, which it's already been established on the federal level, set a precedent, decide this case.
But didn't the Supreme Court decide it? Yeah, answer, if you could, try to answer my question. In 1967, in the Loving v. Virginia case, they said that the right to marry is of a fundamental importance to all individuals, of personal rights essential to the orderly pursuit of happiness. They said that marriage is a fundamental freedom. If you deny two people that freedom, then aren't you going against what the Supreme Court said?
No, not at all. What they said was the Supreme Court said that people that get married have the right to cross state lines. That's the key. What they said was, and this is about interracial marriage, and so what they said is people that get married have the right to cross state lines, because it was about an interracial couple going from one state to the other. So that's specifically what it said. The term freedom of marriage is not a real term. That's something that was cooked up in a political campaign in a back room to try to trick people. There's no such thing as the freedom to marriage. It's not like the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, and freedom of marriage. They slipped the freedom of marriage in there, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize. That's how slick this is. That's how they're getting it by people. So the Lovings versus Virginia case does not uphold a civil right. And again, we got to understand that there's a difference between constitutional rights and civil rights. And so when we look at what they're using these so-called civil rights to do, because Loving versus Virginia did not change the Constitution. It was decided upon under the Constitution.
Eric, let me chime in with a quick question before we run out of time, because something Matt McTighe said, that gay and lesbian couples in Maine want to be able to, and he almost word for word, stand in front of their friends and families to make a lifelong commitment. But right now, gay and lesbian couples, they can do that in Maine. It's just not termed a marriage.
Well, it's not just gays and lesbians, Rick, and that's a great point. This is for heterosexuals and homosexual couples. It's called domestic partnership. And under Maine state law, domestic partnership and marriage are side by side in the same sentence of the same state statute, which means they're the same thing under same state law, the state law. So this whole gay marriage thing, again, that's just a cooked up political rhetorical term to try to appease to people's emotions to get them to ignore the fact of the logic of and the reality of the matter.
Let's talk about the reality and quickly, the money. There's a lot of money coming in. Maybe it's coming in both sides. But if I look at a scorecard, it seems like those who are in favor of allowing same-sex marriage have a whole lot more money coming into the state than those who are for traditional marriage. Your quick reaction to that?
The key word that you just said there is it's coming into the state. It's coming into the state from out of state. And so when you look at the supporters of this same-sex marriage, a lot of it is coming from billionaires that are contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars a whack. And so, and then when you look at why these billionaires are contributing this, it's always based on the same emotional appeal. They know someone that's gay or lesbian. Well, the fact of the matter is these people are not from Maine. They don't know our rights. They don't know our laws, and they don't know how things are here. So for them to try to change our laws based on how they feel, which is based on a lie to begin with, is incredibly wrong. So what the people of Maine need to do, what I would like to ask your listeners to please do right now is Google Maine Equal Rights Center, look the website over, share it with your family and friends. Just copy and paste that link, send it out, ask them to check it out, and we have a donate button on there. Now, we're a brand new organization, Rick. I just created this. I created this year because there is no other campaign in the state in the past or even today that is going to address this and answer people's questions. Provided a resource center for people to be able to go and get the truth of the matter.